Griff, how important is it, to back always a decent performance in home?
Oh, it is certainly. It's an admirable effort the last couple of weeks, really, in terms of what we've set out to do, and we can be reasonably pleased, but we're under no illusions, and the players again have spoken it themselves. We want to be in those competitions, play those type of games, but in terms of our league standings, we know we've got to up the ante to try and climb the table, because without that you don't get what we've had last weekend.
In percentage-wise, how much can you improve on that kind of performance?
Hard to quantify, but certainly we've done a review around the units and the team today, and there is areas both offensively where we did stress Clement, but then a couple of little intricacies of running lines and communication why we didn't perhaps take some opportunities that were there. It's encouraging that we're creating them and getting a game that's more fluid and putting us on the front foot to do so, but it's about the next step as well. Plus defensively as well, we've given them areas where they've been able to run into space and they've got the manpower to cause damage.
What did specifically please you?
The mindset around it. It was probably, the two games, we thought Exeter would be a totally different challenge to Clement in terms of how we approach it tactically, and obviously a 4-0 result in the first week set us up then to perhaps have a different mindset going away from home. But we set the scene early on about what we wanted to achieve there, and being realistic as well, knowing how strong they are at home, recognising that a point would have been a good result away from home, and the players were part of that. But then the planning about, okay, well, what does get you a point? Ordinarily away from home is about scrapping for points here or there, knocking your goals over, but we didn't feel that applied to Clement in terms of the fortress there, and knowing the amount of points that they do accumulate on average per home game. So we had a bold mindset, but we had to back that up with some clear plans around our set piece game. We had some variety around our line out game. So there's no point just kicking there and being one-dimensional. We did a few different things, and the players adapted to training. They drove that on brilliantly, and they had the boldness to keep going, because half-time was tough, being 17 points down, and then seeing a lot of wounded players out there, knowing that they hadn't got what we planned to do, but then having conviction to go again the next 10 minutes the second half. And your first couple of plays in the second half, we didn't get what we wanted in the 22, but they kept banging away. And then because of the duress on Clement, eventually you get a drive where you get all your detail, and credit to the forwards for doing so, everyone in the right body position to get over the line, and then backing it up then with another one just after.
Even at half time, it was 4 tries, still the plan.
Yeah, it was, and that would seem almost mission impossible, I guess. But and sometimes if you're 20 points to 3 down easier, we said, well, we're going out there, people half written us off anyway. Getting 0 wouldn't have mattered to us if it was 40-0 or 36-3. It was either or. So for us, it was about chasing something, and knowing again that we'd had plans to do so. It wasn't trying to chuck something in a half time we hadn't rehearsed or thought about. So it was just reinvigorating the group to do so.
Where does that rank, do you think, in European performances you've been involved with?
I'll certainly be one of the best. I obviously go back to a different age around Ospreys, been involved behind the scenes when we picked up 6 points in first couple of games in previous campaigns, albeit with a different, more well-resourced squad. We've had some tough years in Europe over the last couple of years where we are, and away from home we perhaps haven't done ourselves justice, but I think we certainly did so away from home last weekend. But as I said, we've achieved nothing of any ilk still in that competition. We've got to now push on, but also park it, take some aspects of the game that we can actually take to the Blues game as well.
Having given so much over the last couple of weeks, and what's the kind of approach in terms of resting people or using your squad now this week? What's another important game again?
Yeah, it is a tough balancing act. We've spoke about pushing the same players all the time, and that's tough to manage around a 16-game block. We're 6 games into that, and we fully recognise that we've got players as well training really well, itching to drive some internal competition, and looking at where it's about not so much what you do on the training field, but what you do behind the scenes. Trusting 1 or 2 of those to perhaps join the blend of this senior group as well.
Can you kind of sum up? Obviously, it's difficult for your first 6-7 weeks of the season. The impact of the likes of Alan and Jones and Bigger coming back, the senior guys, Tips and Bridget as well, coming back from the World Cup. How much of an impact that's made in gelling the whole thing together again?
quality players who obviously drive certain standards, but also in terms of perhaps smoothness of message. You look back to us early season, and we obviously encouraged them where we were last year, and we challenged the group in the summer to go on and do more, and we wanted to keep developing our game. At times that was perhaps misplaced, and we've got to look at that as coaches, and sometimes you need simplicity of message of backs be backs, forwards be forwards, and when the boys have come back in the fold, we've perhaps managed to streamline that sort of principle really around this team, to almost go back to what we know we can do well, but actually take us one step back to go two steps forwards. And I think we've been in the middle of that as the boys coming back have also helped enormously, but have obviously helped around just the whole calling process and experience that goes with that as well. So I don't know if that explains it. It's trying to smooth out some of the coaching where we can overdo things at times and ask sometimes difficult questions of players. And early on, perhaps we couldn't get the balance right in terms of the way we wanted to play. But in having the boys come back does, drive a certain standard around what we do. But the information that's key to actually making it work as well.
Is that almost a back to basics approach in some ways?
Yeah, it can be. Looking at the transition of the group initially, we were certainly scratching around for form. I think we'd have had to do that whoever was on the field. But having the boys come back in around commonality of language, you've got to, sort of have a line in the sand to go forward. But we're doing so in the knowledge that actually we can get back to a more integrated game, which we showed glimpses of, but knowing it's the basics that are going to actually give you those positions.
Picking up on the 4 tries theme, Lynn Jones said exactly the same before, after they won against Sale, that was the message rather than winning the game. But usually if you get 4 tries, that will follow. But given the fortune favoured the brave attitude seemed to be coming through during the World Cup, do you think we'll see more of that? Do you think there'll be more of an emphasis on that domestically?
You'd like to think so. Like I said, we have constantly tried to challenge the decision making of the players, the ability to play what they see within the sort of style of play that we're trying to evolve. You can't always do that in terms of some games around conditions, referees, and the tactical constraints some good defensive sides put on you. But there's that balance of us trying to open our game up, and we've endeavoured to do so, but also knowing that what works with who on the park. And I think we're working our way through a bit of competition in the squad, but also players who can make snap decisions based on what they see, but also understanding the ebb and flow of the game. And obviously the experienced players do that better than anyone, and that's part of the learning process for all the squad really, but especially if we are just changing a few things here and there. It doesn't change the ideology almost.
Gruff, do you feel Justin has kicked on this game since the World Cup? Yeah,
I think again it's just looking around. There's a couple of games where we have had to strip it back, and perhaps we haven't seen the free-flowing nature that we want from him in those channels. But again, it's about understand where and how we can now get him back involved in more of our attacking work. He's involved in a couple of good glimpses against Connacht, but that was around a team where we weren't consistent in what we were doing. But now I think we're actually smoothed out all those sort of creases in our game, and now he understands his role around the set piece game. But we're sparking set piece into set piece attack and his role in that.
What have you made of the Blues this season?
I've been pretty impressed in parts. I think there's clearly good players there, and I think it does take time in terms of perhaps different language coming in with different structures, but they've played some decent stuff. They've scored a ton of points, and even though defensively they've shipped some points, I think structurally their defensive organisation is pretty good. They're aggressive, they're good in and around the ball, and they are not afraid to really get in your faces defensively and also move that ball around. Where they've obviously struggled is some individual mistakes, and where again the ebb and flow of the game, where when one mistake becomes two pretty quickly, and sometimes that's put them under pressure. But they've shown a spirit as well. Even in games they've gone down, they've come back heavily often between minutes 60 and 80 to actually go the full 80, which is credit to them.
Are you looking forward to seeing the duel between Eli and Alex Cuthbert? Yeah,
potentially. Yeah, I think Eli is obviously getting into more of a consistent run now, and we've again got to manage this stretch of games and what he does training and whether he plays every game week in, week out. But he understands what we want of him in terms of the winger role, and he had the balance well on the weekend about where to come in field. He ran some good lines from 9 and 10, but where also then to be more alive in different channels, in wider spaces. You know, he's dropping off well for an opposition dink, he picks it up, and then him and Tipping make something from nothing, just by chasing things down and showing real determination. So that was good to see. But up against, you know, a classy performer as well. We know Alex hasn't always fired, perhaps for different reasons, but you know, on his day he runs phase play as aggressively as anyone, and they use him in a strong manner.
With Eli, is it almost as much just good to see him getting a run without injury, because he's been so played, isn't he?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you're always, you know, wary of it. We're monitoring all the data around the amount he trains, you know, his GPS, you know, how hard he trains, the volume of his training, because again, we're in a run of games where, you know, potentially he can't do 16 in a row, so we're going to have to be careful how we manage that. But you're right, it is, you know, great to see him have a consistent run, you know, and just in and around reviewing games, trying to improve him for the next one. A lot of little work on, because he's so receptive that you're finally getting a run where you can give him one or two little things which take him to the next game after. So it's not just the 80 minutes, it's the work that's going in it is helping him develop all the time.
Did you actually lose any injury-wise last week? Or? Yeah.
Nothing that's testing us on selection just yet. There's a few concerns in and around Josh with a head injury assessment and a few other bumps and bruises, but we've pulled up reasonably well, and it's just the tight turnaround is a factor as well in the 6 days.
Yeah, you look pretty bad way when he's on the deck. Is he pretty much likely to be rested this week, Josh?
No, he'll go through the process of the head injury protocols, and we'll see how he pulls up. He's on the bike today, and then he'll get further assessed tomorrow. So you never say never. I mean, to be fair to Cudmore, he came back in and there was a good act of sportsmanship about seeing if he was okay while the game was going on, which I fully respect. But no, because it's a home game and we haven't got a rush in and around travel or planning, we'll probably name this selection as late as possible.
Is it a chance for Eli to make a statement of the Six Nations?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's just about getting the run of games. We've seen he enjoys the European cauldron, and he's backed himself up from previous European campaigns where he's been a try scorer in other high-profile French games for us. So it is about doing that consistently now. But you know, I think we all know the spark is there. You know, Rob Howley's with us. You know, comes down training every other week, spends a lot of time with me around some of the skill work we do. So it's just about, you know, repeating what he does now, you know, in a regular run of games, whilst we manage him accordingly.
You say you were looking at all the figures. Have you been able to put your finger in any way on where the, you know, the history of injury troubles come from? Is there any particular thing that you've changed that you think might help a lot?
Tradition, obviously double days now with a no-go. I mean, that's true of a lot of our players who cannot do a unit session in the morning, team afternoon. We have to sit him out of one of those. So then it's just often just the quantity of metres in any 1 week is pushing pressure on his lower half, and in particular obviously some hip and lower back issues previously. But he's a part of that as well in terms of every morning coming in and being tested around the counter movement jump, and so you get some good readings there, and you can start to work around some wellness figures as well.
His pace certainly covers a Nakataki napping the weekend. I think those who haven't seen him, it's startlingly quick, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think he had a half look and thought, oh, I've got 10 metres pretty comfortably here. But as I said, that's a lesson to all players. You know, whether you've got blistering gas or not, certainly helps. But actually, just the never say die attitude to, you know, keep going, and you'll pick up the odd scrap. It might be a 5% chance of doing so, but if you keep going to the last, you know, at some point you get those little moments. You know, I remember the European Cup final with Rob Howley wins one by doing such a thing, and that's just, you know, it's a big lesson for young players.
Was that sum up the performance in that second half almost? I never say that.
Yeah, it was. As I said, we focused on that first 10 minutes after half time. We kept banging away. The drive was great to see in terms of something that's come together there, and then yeah, the next few moments after that, and there was a real spark to the game, and sparked them to a certain degree as well, but we kept hanging in there then to the last.
Gruff, might you have a few injured players coming back this weekend?
Such as?
What Jeff Astor?
He's involved in training. He's done a modified part of today. Might be tight, but again, considering we're not going to select till later in the week, I'd like to see him in units tomorrow, and then we'll play around again with one or two people not being able to train. Suddenly, you have to adapt accordingly around some of our backline selections, given where we are with the numbers. But I'd certainly like to see maybe a couple of things that he could offer us. Probably a week too soon for Tyler. And probably a couple of weeks, but they are involved in some of the modified work we're doing, so touch wood, if we can stay injury free, and that's the biggest touch wood ever, hopefully we're starting to create a little bit more depth going towards this massive run of games around Christmas time.
A few days on, how do you reflect upon it? Sounds strange, we have a Cardiff with no penalty try decision from Mr. Clancy last weekend.
Yeah, Steve spoke to George, who, to be fair, sought feedback on where we were as a game. He fronted up with us afterwards, and we expressed our thoughts pretty clearly, and he'll have a look at that. But we were quite adamant it was a penalty try, and it's dead set.
Gruff might fear make his debut. Matthew fear. Might he make his debut?
Potentially, looking at how Dimitri pulls around. Obviously, had to come off the field with a lower limb injury, and there's a couple of little minor things there. So he's travelling reserve, he's got used to some of our language calls, he's doing more set piece work. So there's that option, whether it's a week too soon again. We have to balance out. Zebra away becomes a pretty big game, so we're looking at a couple of changes here and there this week, a couple of changes here and there next week, and then take that into Europe, I think.
Did you see the back row after this weekend, Griff? I mean, the two sevens obviously get a lot of headlines, but across the board, the two sides were strength in that area.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I've enjoyed watching Ellis Jenkins this year, but they got almost an embarrassment of riches there as well, in terms of the players they can put out who are strong over the ball, and the balance of potential ball carriers there as well with Turnbull, Vosavai and Dolan. There is some options there, but likewise, we've got 4 or 5 players all pushing for different positions there as well. So whoever goes on the park, it'll be a big factor, but there's much around the set piece battle, and as well again around the tactical part of the game.